Whispers in the Chapel. The morning sun spilled across the stone floor of St. Anne's Chapel, dust motes dancing like tiny spirits in the golden light. Sister Eleanor knelt in the pew, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had gone pale, fingertips trembling from the pressure. Her lips moved in silent prayer, repeating words she had spoken 1,000 times before. Yet today each amen felt heavier, almost unwilling, as if her heart refused to release the memory that haunted her. The incense clung to her throat like a veil of longing, sweet and oppressive, reminding her of a world she had tried desperately to leave behind. It was meant to calm her, to soothe the ache of her restless spirit, but instead it awakened every memory she had buried. Eleanor had arrived at the convent 6 months ago, seeking refuge from a life that had betrayed her. Her family estate, once the jewel of the county, had become a source of scandal, its walls echoing with whispers of shame and gossip. Her father's enemies had moved quickly, her name dragged through salons and drawing rooms, each syllable a dagger aimed at her heart. In St. Anne's, she hoped to find peace, a sanctuary from both the world and her own grief. Yet, even here, even in this sacred refuge, the shadow of him remained, persistent, unwelcome, impossible to forget. His name, Julian, rose unbidden in her prayers. She tried to push it away, tried to focus on words of devotion, but every amen seemed to twist back on itself, carrying his memory like a ghost. Julian Everhart. The boy who had stolen her laughter, her heart, and her trust beneath the spring blossoms of her youth. His image haunted her dreams, appearing at the edges of her mind during prayer, during work in the convent gardens, even in the silent hours before dawn. The first time she saw him again, she had thought it a cruel trick of fate. Julian Everhart now stood at the gates of the convent, tall, commanding, and impossibly familiar. His dark coat caught the morning sun, glinting as he moved, buttons reflecting specks of light. His hair fell over his forehead in the same careless way she remembered, and his storm-grey eyes, piercing and solemn, met hers with a quiet intensity that made her chest ache. It was as if no time had passed at all. "Lady Eleanor," he said, bowing slightly, though his gaze never left her face. The sound of his voice, deep and familiar, stirred something long buried in her heart. A warmth, a longing, a memory she had tried to smother beneath layers of prayer and restraint. "I come seeking guidance, and perhaps forgiveness." Eleanor's hands tightened around her prayer book. Forgiveness for what, she wondered? For the heart that had been broken first? Or for returning now to torment her with a glance, a word, a presence that unravelled her carefully ordered life? She wanted to retreat into the shadows of the chapel, to sink into the quiet solitude she had clung to. But her feet refused to move. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet every memory, every stolen kiss, every laughter-filled afternoon in the rose gardens drew her closer. The scent of lilacs from the convent gardens drifted through the air, mingling with the heady incense. It reminded her of other springs, of open windows, of Julian's laughter ringing beneath blossoms, of the innocence of love she had once known before betrayal had torn it away. Julian stepped closer, his boots clicking softly on the stone floor. The lines around his eyes, the subtle crease of worry at his brow, spoke of hardships Eleanor could not yet understand. Time had changed him, but not diminished him. If anything, it had carved depth into him, a seriousness that made her ache to understand him again. "The convent, it suits you," he said softly. His voice, tinged with awe, carried the weight of unspoken emotion. "You look at peace." Eleanor swallowed, feeling a lump in her throat. Peace. A word she had chased relentlessly, yet now seemed as elusive as the clouds outside the chapel windows. Julian's presence made her feel anything but tranquil. Instead, he stirred a storm within her, desire, longing, and the unbearable ache of memory. I have found comfort here," she murmured, glancing down at the prayer book in her hands. Her voice wavered despite her efforts to remain composed. "It is a sanctuary." Julian's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment she glimpsed the boy she had once loved, the one who had promised her the world, then vanished, leaving her heart in ruins. "The world outside is cruel, Eleanor," he said, stepping a little closer. "But I would endure it all, endure any danger, just to see you safe, just to hear you speak." Her breath caught. His words were both a balm and a blade. They reminded her of the love she had buried, of the pain she had endured, and of the unhealed ache in her chest that refused to fade. The chapel doors closed behind him with a soft thud, and the world outside disappeared. In that moment, Eleanor realized that she could neither flee nor pray him away. The sanctuary she had sought could no longer protect her from the past, or the man who embodied it so completely. Her mind wandered to the summer of her 17th year, to the estate gardens where Julian had first captured her heart. She remembered the feel of his hand brushing hers beneath the apple trees, the mischievous glint in his eyes, as he had dared her to climb the tallest tree in the orchard. She remembered the stolen afternoons spent in the rose garden, petals brushing their cheeks as they whispered secrets and promises they could not yet understand. A shiver ran down Eleanor's spine as she recalled the moment he had disappeared, leaving only a hastily folded note and a heartbreak that had seemed insurmountable. His sudden absence, unexplained and unannounced, had shattered her world. She had written letters, countless, desperate letters, but none had reached him. Whispers of his departure, distorted by gossip and rumor, had reached her before any explanation ever could. And so she had fled to St. Anne's, seeking a peace she feared she might never find. And now he was here, standing in the sacred space she had chosen for refuge, as if fate itself had conspired to remind her that the past never truly dies. "Eleanor." Julian's voice was soft, a mere whisper now, yet it cut through her reverie like a blade. Do you remember the promise you made me under the apple tree?" Eleanor's fingers trembled around the prayer book. I don't know what you mean," she whispered, though her heart betrayed her with an answer she could not admit aloud. "The promise to never let go of what we had," he said, stepping closer still, his presence overwhelming. "I have kept mine. I have never forgotten you, not for a single day." Tears stung Eleanor's eyes, though she refused to let them fall. She closed her eyes, pressing her palms together as if the physical act of prayer could anchor her to reason. Yet her heart raced uncontrollably, betraying her resolve. Every amen she had ever whispered now felt like it had been a prayer for him. Every silent plea for peace had been nothing more than longing for Julian Everhart. A single beam of sunlight fell across the pew, illuminating her face. Julian reached out, almost hesitantly, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Eleanor's breath caught. The simplest touch, the faintest contact sent a shiver through her body, awakening a longing she had thought extinguished by months of solitude. "Eleanor," Julian whispered again, softer this time, almost pleading, "I am here. You do not have to endure this alone anymore." She opened her eyes slowly, meeting his storm-grey gaze. In that instant, The chapel walls seemed to vanish. There was no past, no scandal, no convent, only the two of them, bound by memory, longing, and a love that had refused to die. Eleanor knew, with sudden clarity, that she could not run, could not pray him away, and perhaps could not even want to. The sanctuary she had sought for solace was no longer enough. Her prayers had failed to shield her heart, and Julian had returned to reclaim it, whether she was ready or not. She whispered a final, shaky prayer, not for peace, not for forgiveness, but for courage. Courage to face the impossible, courage to confront the love she had tried to deny, and courage to endure the storm Julian had reignited in her soul. Echoes of the past. The convent gardens were a sanctuary of quiet green, where lavender and rosemary swayed gently in the morning breeze. Eleanor walked along the cobblestone path, her fingers brushing against the soft petals as though touching them might anchor her scattered thoughts. Yet today, even the familiar tranquility of St. Anne's could not calm the storm that Julian's presence had unleashed. Each step brought a memory she had tried to bury. She remembered the spring of her 17th year, when the estate gardens had been alive with sunlight and laughter. Julian had appeared one afternoon beneath the blooming apple trees, dark eyes gleaming with mischief. A small bouquet of wildflowers clutched in his hands. "Eleanor," he had said, bowing playfully, "I claim the honor of your company for an adventure." She had laughed, tossing her hair back, the sound echoing among the blossoms. "An adventure? What sort of adventure could you possibly imagine, Julian?" "Something daring," he replied, eyes alight with challenge. "Something the world will remember." She had known then that no one in the county could ever match the exhilaration he brought, his laughter like wind through leaves, his presence like sunlight on her skin. They had spent hours climbing trees, chasing each other through rose gardens and whispering secrets under the shade of ancient oaks. Every touch, every glance, every stolen kiss beneath the blossoms was a promise of love that felt both infinite and fragile. And then, without warning, he had vanished. A letter left on her bedside table, hastily folded, with words that hinted at duty and danger, but explained nothing. Her heart had shattered in silence, and the estate had become a prison of whispered rumors and pointed glances. She had waited for him, written letter after letter, only to find the post returned unread. The pain had driven her to St. Anne's, seeking refuge in prayer and routine, believing that devotion could dull the ache of loss. Yet now he was here, and the memories he stirred were as vivid as the sunlight that fell across the convent paths. Eleanor paused beside a rose bush, her hands brushing the soft petals. Julian had loved roses. She remembered him plucking a single crimson bloom and pressing it into her hand, saying, "Even in the darkest winter, beauty finds a way to bloom." A soft voice interrupted her reverie. "You remember everything, don't you?" Startled, she turned to see Julian leaning against the stone balustrade, arms crossed loosely, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The breeze carried the scent of lavender from the garden, mingling with the faint aroma of his coat. Faint leather and something uniquely him that made her pulse quicken. I try to remember what is important," she said cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. "Memories can guide us." He took a step closer, the sound of his boots on the cobblestones like a drumbeat in her chest. "Or they can haunt us," he said softly. "I know I have haunted you, Eleanor, perhaps more than I should have." Her heart clenched at the honesty in his voice. "You left," she whispered, "without a word, without a reason. And yet, here you are, as if nothing has changed." Julian's eyes darkened. The storm-grey intensity she remembered from youth, now sharpened by years of responsibility and regret. "Everything has changed, everything," he said. "I was forced to leave, to make choices that I could not explain. I had no right to ask for your understanding, yet I never stopped thinking of you." Eleanor's throat tightened. She wanted to hate him, to tell him that the wounds he left could never be healed, yet the warmth of his presence made her powerless. Every memory she had fought to forget now pressed against her heart. Like a tide, she could not resist. "I prayed," she said finally, voice trembling. "I prayed for peace, for guidance. I tried to forget you in every amen, but each one sounded like your name." Julian's expression softened, almost tenderly. "And I prayed too," he admitted, "for your safety, for your happiness, even from afar, even when I could not see you. Every prayer of mine has carried your name." The wind stirred the branches above them, sending petals fluttering like confetti to the cobblestones. Eleanor reached out instinctively, catching one, and Julian's hand hovered near hers for a moment. The air between them charged with unspoken longing. For hours they spoke in low tones, sharing fragments of the past, bits of laughter, and the fears that had haunted them both. Julian told her of his trials, schemes at court, dangers he had narrowly avoided, responsibilities he could never share with anyone but her. Eleanor, in turn, spoke of the quiet life she had built in the convent, of the solace she had found in prayer, of the ache that had never left her heart. The garden seemed to close around them, shutting out the world beyond, leaving only the two of them suspended between memory and reality. Every glance, every sigh, every pause was heavy with longing, yet tempered by fear. Fear of breaking vows, of repeating past mistakes, of letting desire eclipse reason. As the sun dipped low toward the horizon, bathing the garden in gold and crimson, Julian brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Eleanor," he murmured, voice rough with emotion, "do you not see? We were never truly apart. Fate may have separated us, but nothing, not distance, nor duty, nor time, could erase what we share." Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes. I do not know if I am strong enough," she admitted. "I have lived in silence for so long, convinced that peace was all I could have. And yet, every memory of you makes that peace impossible." He took her hands in his, warm and steady, anchoring her in the moment. "Then let us face it together," he said. "Let us not hide, let us not fear. Whatever comes, whatever the world throws at us, we face it as one. You and I, always." For the first time in months, Eleanor felt the tight coil in her chest loosen. Her prayers, her solitude, her years of silent endurance, all had led to this moment. The past had come to meet her, embodied in Julian, and she realized that no amount of devotion, no repetition of Amen, could erase what was meant to be. She nodded, letting the tears fall freely now. "Then we face it together," she echoed. And in that instant, the convent garden felt alive with possibility, the air electric with hope, love, and the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine. Secrets behind stone walls. The convent had always been a place of quiet routines and whispered devotion, yet the presence of Julian Everhart had transformed it into something fragile, dangerous, and intoxicating. Eleanor moved through the cloistered halls with a measured pace, but her thoughts were anything but measured. Every glance toward the chapel doors, every subtle footstep on the stone corridors, brought the echo of his voice and the memory of storm-grey eyes that refused to let go. It was late afternoon when Julian appeared again. leaning against the ivy-draped walls of the convent courtyard. The sunlight caught the glint of his coat buttons, and a shadow passed across his face, momentarily obscuring the calm confidence he usually wore like armor. "Eleanor," he said, stepping closer, his voice low, almost conspiratorial, "I need your counsel." She blinked, startled. "My counsel? I am a novice of St. Anne's, Julian. My knowledge of the world beyond these walls is limited." He smiled faintly, though there was tension in the line of his mouth. "Perhaps. But your mind is sharper than you believe, and your heart perhaps even wiser." The corner of Eleanor's lips twitched, though she tried to hide it. Julian had a way of speaking that cut through her resolve like sunlight through stained glass. She followed him toward a secluded section of the garden, where the scent of rosemary and lavender was thick, and the world beyond the convent seemed to fall away. "They are after me," Julian admitted, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Not just enemies of my family, Eleanor. People I once trusted. Men who would see me ruined, or dead, if it served their ambition." Eleanor's hands clenched together at her side. "Why? Why would anyone want to harm you? You have done nothing, nothing," he interrupted, voice taut with frustration. "I have inherited a name, a legacy that others covet. I have navigated treacherous courts, fought battles you cannot imagine. I have survived, Eleanor, barely." Her chest tightened, not only from the gravity of his words, but from the way they revealed the man he had become. He was no longer the boy who had whispered promises beneath the apple trees. He was a man shaped by danger, by secrets, by responsibilities that would have crushed anyone else. I do not know what to say," Eleanor whispered, voice small. She wanted to offer comfort, guidance, but the weight of his troubles felt immense. And yet she could not turn away, could not deny the pull he had over her heart. "You need not say anything," Julian replied, his eyes searching hers, stormy and urgent. "I need only your presence, your understanding. You are the one place I can breathe without fear of judgment or betrayal." Eleanor looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. The convent had taught her discipline, patience, and devotion. It had given her structure, safety, and the illusion of control. Julian had shattered that illusion in an instant. They spoke in hushed tones as the sun dipped low, painting the garden in golden hues. Julian revealed fragments of the threats he faced, secret plots by ambitious nobles, debts owed that could ruin him, and whispers of betrayal from those closest to him. Each revelation weighed heavily on Eleanor's heart, but she refused to show fear, not when he needed strength, if only in the form of her calm presence. "You must be careful," she said finally, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. "These walls, they may hide you from the eyes of the world, but not from fate itself." Julian's hand brushed hers, almost imperceptibly, and Eleanor felt the familiar spark, the one that had first ignited beneath the rose blossoms of her youth. Her heart leapt, yet terror mingled with desire. To feel, to want, to hope, it was a perilous path. "You fear for me," he said softly, "and yet you are here. You do not flee. That is what gives me courage." Eleanor's lips parted, words she longed to speak trapped in her throat. Instead, she only nodded, feeling the tension between them thrum like a heartbeat in the garden. Later, as twilight settled over the convent, Eleanor found herself in the chapel once more, kneeling in silent prayer. Her hands clasped the worn pages of her prayer book, yet her thoughts were elsewhere. On Julian, on the danger that followed him, on the impossible longing she felt for a man she had tried to forget. She thought of the stolen moments of their youth, the laughter, the whispered secrets, the stolen kisses beneath the apple trees, and realized that the sanctuary of St. Anne's could not shield her from memory or desire. Julian's presence had torn through the walls she had built, leaving her exposed to every feeling she had tried to suppress. As the evening bells tolled, Eleanor's mind raced with questions and fears. Could love survive amidst danger? Could desire coexist with devotion? And most terrifying of all, could she resist a man who had claimed her heart long before she even realized it? The answers did not come, only the sound of his voice in her memory, the touch of his hand in hers, and the unshakable certainty that whatever storms lay ahead, she would face them, because her heart would not allow her to walk away. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows on the chapel walls, and Eleanor realized with a sudden, undeniable clarity that she was no longer merely praying for peace. She was praying for courage. Courage to face Julian, to face herself, and to confront the truth that had been echoing through her soul for years. Some loves are not meant to be forgotten, no matter how fervent the prayers. Forbidden longing. The convent was quiet that evening, save for the soft rustle of silk robes along stone corridors and the occasional whisper of a candle's flame. Eleanor walked along the cloistered garden path, the last rays of the sun turning the sky into a canvas of amber and rose. Her heart, however, was far from tranquil. Julian was near. She could feel it in every pulse of her body, every flutter of breath that caught unexpectedly in her throat. The longing she had tried so fiercely to suppress since the moment he returned was now a living thing inside her, restless, urgent, undeniable. She stopped at the fountain, its waters reflecting the fading light. The sound of trickling water usually brought her peace, yet tonight it only amplified the storm within her. She could still feel his hand where it had brushed hers in the garden, feel the heat of his gaze as it pinned her heart with every word. "Eleanor!" The voice was low, urgent, carrying across the garden like a summons. She turned to see Julian stepping out from the shadows, his coat dark against the twilight, his storm-grey eyes searching hers. The tension in his posture mirrored her own, a reflection of the forbidden desire they both felt but could not yet act upon. "Julian?" she whispered, though her voice sounded foreign, even to her own ears. He closed the distance between them, each step deliberate, careful, as if approaching a fragile flame. "I cannot stay away," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "Every moment I am near you, every glance, every word, it becomes more unbearable to pretend otherwise." Eleanor's hands trembled, twisting in her robes. "We cannot," she murmured, though her resolve faltered. "You know why. I have taken vows. I cannot—" "And yet," he interrupted, stepping closer, the space between them charged with a dangerous energy. "Every moment without you is a torment. Every prayer you speak, I hear your name, and I am undone." Her breath caught. Each word he spoke was a blade and a balm, cutting through the restraints she had built around herself, while igniting a fire she could not quench. The convent walls, the candles, the silent prayers, they were meaningless now. Julian's presence had shattered them all. She began, but words failed her. Her mind screamed with the logic of her devotion, the necessity of distance, yet her heart betrayed her with every beat. She wanted to reach for him, to feel the warmth of his hands, the solidity of his presence. She wanted, desperately, to surrender to the longing that had never truly faded. Julian lifted his hand slowly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, and Eleanor closed her eyes at the simple touch, It was fleeting, almost reverent, yet it sent shivers down her spine, igniting a fire she had tried to bury under months of prayer and discipline. "You do not have to speak," Julian said, softly. "Let your heart speak for you, as mine speaks for me. I have loved you since the day I first saw you beneath the apple trees. I have never stopped, Eleanor. Never." Tears threatened to spill, but she blinked them back, caught between devotion and desire, between fear and longing. "Julian, we cannot," she whispered again, her voice trembling. If we give in, everything I have worked for, everything I have sworn, it would be undone." He pressed closer, until the space between them vanished. "Then let us be undone," he said quietly, almost pleading. "If loving you is a sin, then I will bear it. If the world forbids it, then we will defy it. Eleanor, I am yours now and always, even if it means facing the wrath of heaven itself." Her heart thundered in her chest. She could no longer deny it. The years of longing, the silent prayers, the aching memories, they all converged into a single irresistible truth. She wanted him, desperately, irrevocably. She took a trembling step toward him, then another until she could feel the heat of his body, the unspoken promise in the curve of his lips. Their breaths mingled, each inhalation a shared confession, each heartbeat a drumbeat of inevitable surrender. And yet, just as her resolve faltered completely, Eleanor pulled back, trembling. I cannot yet," she admitted, her voice breaking. I need to think, to pray, to—" She trailed off, tears slipping freely now. Julian cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "Then I will wait," he whispered, "for as long as you need. But know this, Eleanor, my heart will not let you go. Every amen you have spoken, every silent prayer you have made, I have heard them all, and they have all been for me." The wind stirred around them, carrying the scent of lavender and roses, wrapping them in a cocoon of twilight and longing. Eleanor's fingers brushed against his, tentative yet magnetic, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel the depth of what she had denied for so long. The world outside, the convent walls, the prayers, all faded into insignificance. There was only Julian, only the fire he ignited, only the truth she could no longer ignore. And though the path ahead was uncertain, dangerous and forbidden, Eleanor knew one thing with absolute clarity. She could no longer pretend her heart did not belong to him. As the night deepened and the first stars appeared in the sky, they remained there, standing close but restrained, the air thick with unspoken promises. The forbidden longing that had haunted them for years now pulsed between them. A living force neither could deny, shaping the course of the days to come. And for the first time, Eleanor allowed herself a quiet, trembling hope that love, even forbidden, might still find a way. Shadows and schemes. The morning mist hung low over the convent grounds, curling around the stone walls like a cloak of secrecy. Eleanor moved quietly along the corridors, her heart still racing from the stolen moments with Julian the night before. Yet the peace of the dawn was deceptive. Letters had arrived, bearing urgent news from Julian's estate, warnings of betrayal, whispers of treachery, and schemes that threatened to topple everything he had built. Eleanor read the letters in private, her fingers tracing the elegant script as her mind raced. Julian was in danger. Men who had once sworn loyalty were plotting against him, scheming to seize his lands, his title, even his life. And now she knew she could not remain idle, not when he was so near, yet so vulnerable. The first time Julian mentioned the plots, it had been in a hushed voice in the garden. "They do not care for honor, Eleanor, only for power," he had said, storm-grey eyes shadowed with worry. "And some of them, they were once my friends." Eleanor had shivered then, but the fear was laced with determination. She would not allow harm to come to him, not if she could help it. The convent had taught her discipline, secrecy, and patience, skills she now realized could be wielded in ways Julian had never expected. By late afternoon, Julian arrived at the convent once more, his usual composed demeanor shadowed by tension. "I fear they are closer than I thought," he confessed, voice low. "Letters intercepted, men watching my estate. I do not know whom to trust." Eleanor stepped forward, her mind suddenly alive with plans. "Then we must be clever," she said firmly, a confidence emerging from deep within her that surprised even her. "We will protect your estate, your life, together." His eyes widened slightly. "Together?" She nodded. "Yes, I cannot stand by while danger threatens you. Not when—" She paused, her heart catching. "Not when you are mine in every way that matters." Julian studied her, as if measuring the resolve in her eyes, then slowly nodded. "Then we shall face it together, but it will not be easy. Some of those plotting against me are dangerous, cunning, and ruthless." The days that followed were tense and uncertain. Eleanor and Julian communicated in secret, arranging messages through trusted servants, devising strategies to expose the schemers, and planning contingencies should any plan fail. The convent walls, once a sanctuary of peace, became a hub of clandestine activity. Every whispered conversation, every furtive glance, carried the weight of both love and peril. One evening, Eleanor found herself alone in the convent library, poring over a ledger Julian had sent her. Each name, each notation, revealed allies and enemies alike. She traced the lines of ink with her finger, memorizing each detail, her mind racing to anticipate threats before they materialized. She felt both exhilaration and fear. Exhilaration at playing a part in protecting the man she loved. Fear for what might happen if they failed. A sudden sound, a footstep, soft yet deliberate, made her glance up. Julian stood in the doorway, his expression softened by relief and pride. "You are extraordinary," he whispered. "I do not know how I survived without you before." Eleanor looked up at him, and in the dim light of the library, shadows danced across their faces, emphasizing the tension between desire and duty. "I am not extraordinary," she replied. "I am only willing to do what must be done." He stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. "And yet, you are the bravest person I have ever known," he said softly. "You risk so much, for me." Her heart fluttered at his words, yet she forced herself to remain composed. "We are partners," she said firmly, though her voice betrayed the tremor of emotion beneath. "I do this because I care, and because I cannot let harm come to you." Julian reached out, capturing her hand in his, their fingers entwining. "Then we face the shadows together," he murmured, "and when this storm passes, we will finally be free, free to love without fear." The days turned into weeks as they worked in secret, uncovering plots, sending messages, and maneuvering through a web of deceit. Every small victory was tempered by the constant knowledge that danger lurked at the edges of their lives. Each encounter with Julian became a mixture of tension, longing, and the unspoken promise of a love that could not remain hidden. Late one night, Eleanor stood at the convent balcony, gazing out toward the distant estate. The moon cast silver light across the landscape, illuminating shadows that seemed to shift and flicker with hidden threats. Julian appeared behind her, wrapping a protective arm around her waist. "They are closer," he whispered, "but we are ready. Whatever comes, we face it together." Eleanor leaned into him, the warmth of his body a comfort against the chill of the night. "And our hearts?" she asked softly. "They are ours," Julian said, voice full of certainty. "No plot, no danger, no shadow can take them from us." The night air seemed to still around them, holding its breath as if acknowledging the unbreakable bond forming between them. And though the dangers ahead were many, Eleanor felt a fierce determination rising in her. She would not allow fear to dictate their lives. She would not allow the shadows to claim Julian or the love that had defied time, distance, and secrecy. Together they turned from the balcony, hearts entwined, ready to face whatever schemes awaited them beyond the convent walls. And in that moment, Eleanor realized that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the willingness to confront it, hand in hand with the one who held her heart. The storm within rain pelted the convent windows in heavy sheets, the storm outside echoing the turmoil within Eleanor's heart. The normally serene halls of St. Anne's were tense, almost claustrophobic, as if the stone walls themselves sensed the danger closing in. Julian had arrived hours before, his usual calm replaced by urgency and restrained frustration. "They've made their move," he said grimly, pacing the small library where they had gathered intelligence. "One of the men plotting against me has been spotted near the estate. I fear it is only the beginning." Eleanor's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "We've prepared for this," she said, trying to steady her voice, though her heart raced. "We know their methods, their allies. We can anticipate them." Julian paused, studying her with intensity. "And yet," he said softly, "I am terrified for you. You should not be here, Eleanor. You are not trained for this. I am here because I choose to be," she interrupted, her voice firm despite the fear fluttering in her chest. "Because you are worth every risk." His storm-grey eyes softened, shadowed with both love and worry. "And yet, my heart cannot bear the thought of losing you." The tension between them was electric, but there was no time for longing now. Footsteps echoed outside the library, followed by hushed whispers. Eleanor and Julian exchanged a glance, then moved to the balcony, the rain soaking their cloaks as they peered into the darkness. A figure lurked near the edge of the garden, cloaked and silent. Eleanor's heart pounded. "There!" she whispered. Julian's hand brushed hers briefly, a grounding touch, before he drew his sword. "Stay behind me," he commanded gently, though the fear in his voice was undeniable. The figure approached, revealing a familiar insignia on the coat. It was one of the conspirators, a man who had once feigned loyalty. Julian's expression hardened, and with a swift motion he confronted the intruder, forcing him back toward the estate gates. Eleanor, despite her fear, moved to support him, her quick thinking allowing them to trap the man's escape. "You are clever," Julian said, gripping her shoulders. "Do not ever underestimate your mind, Eleanor. It is as powerful as your heart." Eleanor's pulse raced, not just from the danger, but from the thrill of standing beside the man she loved. The storm raged around them, lightning illuminating the garden in blinding flashes. In that chaotic brilliance, their eyes met, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. "You are frightened," Julian said softly, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "I was," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I am here, and I will not leave you." He drew her close, sheltering her from the rain and the danger. And in that embrace, Eleanor felt the storm within her heart mirror the tempest outside. Fear, longing, love, and adrenaline intertwined, creating a moment that was at once perilous and intoxicating. The conspirators' retreating footsteps echoed in the distance, and Julian finally allowed himself to relax slightly. "We have won a small victory," he said, pulling her close, "but the war is far from over." Eleanor rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Then we face it together," she murmured. Julian's lips brushed her forehead in a tender kiss, an acknowledgement of shared courage and deep, abiding love. "Together," he echoed. As the storm finally began to wane, leaving the convent drenched but intact, Eleanor realized that she had faced more than just physical danger. She had confronted her own fears, her own longing, and her devotion. Standing beside Julian, she understood that love was not just a gentle flame. It was a force capable of weathering any storm. And though the days ahead promised more danger, more treachery, and perhaps even heartbreak, Eleanor felt an unshakable certainty. Her heart would not abandon Julian, and together they could endure whatever the world dared to throw at them. Every Amen, his name. The morning sun rose over the convent, spilling golden light across dew-kissed roses and ivy-clad walls. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that something precious was being reclaimed. Eleanor stood at the edge of the garden, the hem of her robe brushing wet grass, her hand entwined with Julian's. For the first time in months, she felt the calm of certainty, a peace that had nothing to do with silence or prayer, and everything to do with the man who now held her heart. Julian's storm-grey eyes met hers, unwavering, tender, and resolute. "We have endured much," he said softly, "more than I ever imagined, and yet here we are." Eleanor let a soft laugh escape her, a sound mingling relief and joy. "Yes," she said, "here we are, alive, together, and free from the shadows that haunted us." He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering just long enough to send a shiver down her spine. Every moment of fear, every sleepless night, every secret prayer, it has all led to this, to you. Eleanor's throat tightened. She had whispered his name in countless amens, tried to bury her longing in devotion, but nothing could erase what her soul remembered. She reached up, touching his cheek gently, tracing the lines that had formed from years of struggle, responsibility, and survival. "Every prayer," she whispered, voice trembling with the weight of emotion, "every silent wish, it was always you." Julian smiled, a quiet, confident smile that seemed to anchor the morning itself. "And every amen I have ever whispered," he said, "will be for you, always." The convent gates opened before them, sunlight spilling over the threshold, illuminating the path beyond. But this time, the gates did not signify separation or confinement. They were an embrace, an invitation into a world that no longer demanded secrecy or sacrifice. Together, Eleanor and Julian stepped forward, hands entwined, hearts open. As they rode through the morning mist, the world awakening around them, the Shiodaha sound of chapel bells echoed behind, soft and melodic. Each chime carried memory and blessing, a reminder that some prayers, no matter how fervent, cannot erase the heart. Eleanor's thoughts drifted back to the days of whispered secrets under the apple trees, the stolen afternoons in the rose garden, and the long nights of fear and longing in the convent. Every trial, every shadow, every moment of doubt had been a thread leading her inexorably back to him. And now there was no pretense, no restraint, only the fullness of a love that had endured every storm. Julian leaned close, his lips brushing her temple. We have our whole lives ahead of us, he murmured. No plot, no fear, no past can take this from us. Eleanor closed her eyes, savouring the warmth of his breath, the certainty in his words. She felt the sun on her face, the wind in her hair, and the promise of all that awaited them. I never want to forget, she admitted softly. Not you, not this, not us. And you never will, he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her lips, because love, Eleanor, once it has called your name, it never lets go. The world around them unfolded like a painting of possibilities. Rolling fields, glistening rivers, and skies so vast they seemed to hold every hope and dream. The morning mist rose around them, golden and fragrant, carrying the echoes of laughter, whispered prayers, and the eternal rhythm of hearts intertwined. And so, Eleanor learned that forgetting is impossible when the soul remembers. That some loves, no matter how long buried, how fervently hidden, how desperately denied, will always call your name. And some hearts once found never truly let go. They rode on together into the light of a new day, leaving behind fear, shadows, and every hesitation. Their love, once forbidden, was now unbound, expansive, and enduring. A promise made not in whispers alone, but in every heartbeat, every glance, every shared breath.